How much time we have?
About 7 minutes.
Oh yeah, we have time for one more question. Who has to ask the question wants the final word? This gentleman right here.
First question. If you drop the pen on the moon, will it fall or will it happen? What?
If you drop the pen on the moon? If you drop the pen on the moon? Why are you asking me? I'm a philosopher. Anyway, I'm assuming that the law of gravity still is operative on the moon, isn't it? It's just not as strong. It's just not as strong as on Earth because the mass of the moon is less than the mass of Earth. I know a little bit of physics.
If you assume that religion is true, and you didn't, in your whole speech, give a lot of convincing, that you didn't really wrestle with the truth of religion very much. If you assume that it is true, and the stakes are basically after death, torment, as much pain as you can possibly imagine times about it, or things being as great as they can possibly be times about it. However arbitrary the rules laid down by God for you to achieve that scene, is it not, by the definition of objectivism, trying to create a better life for yourself, better to obey those rules than not have no rewards?
Okay. The question is, if God exists, and the question is right, I didn't get into the metaphysical questions here. The topic of this talk, after all, is religion versus morality. It's not religion versus rational metaphysics. So I didn't give the arguments as to why there is no God. You're quite right about that. But the question is, if there is a God, right, this is like Pascal's wager, right? I mean, if there is a God, then isn't it rational then to accept God's existence so that I can gain the rewards, and irrational to reject God's existence and and maybe suffer eternal damnation? Well, there's a couple of points. That's an interesting question. There's a couple of points I want to make that go beyond the scope of this course, but that's why there's a Q A. Point number one: there is no God. It's a fantasy. The reason for that. And you could prove that very simply. First of all, the concept of God involves, if we go by the Judeo-Christian Islamic definition, this all-powerful, all-knowing creator of heaven and earth. The concept of creation ex nihilo is impossible, right? The idea we start with nothing and then God creates a universe. That's logically impossible. It's a logical impossibility. If you start with nothing, you're going to end with nothing. That alone establishes there is no God. That is, there is no creator. There can be no such thing. It is a logical impossibility. Furthermore, God is held to be a spiritual. God is held to be a spiritual. God is held to be a spiritual being. And so it's not even that he creates a universe out of not much, he creates it out of nothing, or it's a spiritual being who creates a material universe, making it doubly impossible if that's logically possible at all. Furthermore, God's held to be a consciousness. He has some kinds of knowledge there. By what means? He has no brain, he's not a physical being, he's a spiritual being, he has no brain, he has no sense organs. Everything we know about consciousness that requires a bodily means, that requires a brain, a nervous system, sense modalities, etc. Everything is impossible. So it's all a fantasy. What's that?
This isn't what I'm asking is, assuming religion exists.
All right, assuming, okay.
Assuming it exists, isn't it moral by the objectivist morality that you laid out to follow these rules in this life, no matter how crazy they might be, if you are for following this arbitrary?
Yeah, I got it. I already restated the question. But the main answer to your question is, look what you're asking. And after just established there is no God, you're saying, okay, granted that this is a fantasy, it's impossible, it's intellectually as mistaken as possible. But if this fantasy were true, wouldn't it be right to obey the fantasy? And the obvious answer to you is it's a fantasy. No, it's not right to live out a fantasy. You live out a fantasy, you're denying reality, and all you can possibly do is fail in reality. Furthermore, you want to play fantasy games? Here's a fantasy game for you. And I'm going to write an essay on this at some point. I'm going to take the exact opposite of Pascal's wage. We'll call it Bernstein's wage. This is not fun. Bernstein's wage asks this. If God exists, then He created human beings. He created us as a rational being. He created us with the mind. Presumably, He intends us to use it. Presumably, He does not intend us to accept faith-based bullshit that spiritual beings exist with no bodily means. They create the world from nothing. Burning bushes speak. Men live inside whales. Virgins give birth. We accept this vomit on faith. We give up our rational consciousness to accept this vomit. Bernstein's wages says that anybody who rejects the rational mind given to us by man goes straight to hell and burns for all eternity, and only atheists go to heaven. Only rational atheists are saved because rational human beings accept the gift God gave us to use our minds and reject faith-based nonsense. Reject anything that undermines our survivalism. Does that answer your question? Yeah, I think it does. All right, we had time.